well, the issue with me is that I haven't been teaching long enough to see such a dramatic change in how students have been raised. For me, it's being the part of this generation with like this crazy student loan debt.
Yeah.
And I've just hit a crossroads where like I've just come to see that, as much as I've paid on my grad school loan, like it's all been the interest. The funny thing is that the actual teaching, despite the online stuff, it's been going well for me. On the one hand, I feel like I have students that are better prepared now than I did when I started, also that I've gotten better as a teacher. But on the other hand, I don't have to deal with as much of the parent interactions at all, like K through 12 does. So that helps me a lot. I have to deal with this parent stuff. But on the other hand, I've definitely noticed a lower percentage of African-American students that I have. And I think that's a part of general demographics changing in the city, where the Black population of Chicago has shrunk pretty considerably.
Is there a gentrification going on in the inner city?
I think that's part of it, but what I've been seeing more is that I think it's part of this, the total Black population of Chicago shrinking.
Get out, really?
Yeah, the total Black population of Chicago is down by like at least 30-40% in the past 10 to 20 years. And a similar thing has happened in a couple other cities, especially Los Angeles. Well, Los Angeles Black population is down by like 50 or more. And at the same time, the Black population has been shrinking. The Latino population grew a lot. So I definitely have a lot more Latino students than I did when I started. And I think that could be from a variety of different things, everything from closing a lot of public schools in a lot of Black neighborhoods, disinvestment in Black neighborhoods. And then also a big theory that I have of it is that the segregation and racism in some ways is worse here than everywhere else. And combine that with sometimes not as many opportunities. I think some Black people in Chicago have just moved back down south, because I think they feel like there's a ceiling here as to where you can go as a Black person in a lot of careers. And I think a lot of them, move back down south and have stayed.
So to enter where you are you talking ACT, SAT, or Wonderlic, or what does one need to get into Malcolm X College?
Oh, it's pretty open enrollment.
Okay.
Now, they have had this issue of a lot of our students need remediation.
Yes.
And that's been an issue where a lot of students of all ethnicities sometimes had to go through like a lengthy remediation process. And they've tried to really slim that down because they felt like it was eating up a lot of people's financial aid before they even got to credit classes.
Yeah.
I don't teach those classes as much, so I'm not sure exactly the latest of what they're doing with that. They were floating all kinds of different options of how they're going to try to do this. I'm not sure what they actually fully implemented with the remedial English, especially.
Okay.
Yeah, I know we, in the program I teach, it's a certified medical administrative assistant class. And we use the TABE test to kind of, for lack of a better term, kind of weed out people. And so if you can't even test at an 8th grade level in reading, we generally don't accept people into it because we did that before. And we just ended up spending, like you said, way too much time in remediation. And it like doubled the length of the program. So we had to have people at a certain competency, a reading level, just to kind of make the program work. And even with that, we still offer some remediation that they have to do offline and on the off day of non-regular classes. So I do understand, but you are right. It was because it was eating up financial aid and making a 2-year process, sometimes a 3-year process, and increasing student debt to that extent.
Now, when you were teaching K through 12, what percentage of your students continued on to college level?
Well, I've always taught in the Inglewood community. So it wasn't a high percentage. I would say at the best times, it was about 34 or 35%. Near the end, it was down to about 27, 28%. Um, because college, you know, what the kids just told me, they didn't see the pathway of college, quote unquote, being the way of success. That had a lot, there were a lot of factors in that, from hip hop culture to um, just not being able to gain admission, to not having access. We did try to expose kids to a lot of the HBCUs because they were actually, for one while, giving out a lot of scholarships from kids from up north to even come down, you know, just to enroll. They were lowering ACTs to, you know, 14 and 16 just to increase enrollment, hoping that if they could get them there and establish that pipeline, that they could get enrollment up, because obviously federal dollars are based a lot on your freshman enrollment class. You know, when that's down, you lose federal money. So, but it just, kids just didn't really want to go, particularly, you know, the Robesons, the Inglewoods, the Hirsch, you know, some of those neighborhood schools that weren't Whitney Young and, you know, Brooks College Prep. You know, when you start dropping down, it falls off dramatically.
Yeah. Well, either one of you can answer this, but how does, I guess this might be more in line for Mr. King, but how does Malcolm X College, how do they compete with, like, I think DePaul is local, right? The University of Chicago. And I know University of Chicago is very difficult to get in, so that might be the not a fair comparison. But to the smaller schools like DePaul, and I think let's see, is it Chicago Kent, right? They have
State.
Yeah, Kent State. Yeah. How do your students compare, and is it possible for them to enter there first, or tell me how that dynamic works?
Yeah, well, you know, these days that's a really interesting question. I haven't spent enough time, you know, like in universities like lately to really compare it. But I get the general sense that a lot of the student population I have right now, I think the higher performing students, like the upper half of my classes, I really feel like there's probably almost no differences between them and schools like UIC, DePaul, and Loyola. I think you know, Malcolm's enrollment has actually been pretty good last few years, and has actually been one of like the only city colleges to stay about stable or go up actually in recent years. I think a lot of it is purely because, you know, with this whole student loan debt, you know, situation exploding, I think a lot of my students, when they look at their option of like UIC or DePaul or city colleges, it just came down to a money thing.
Yeah.
And they felt like, well, gen eds are gen eds for my first 2 years. Why don't I just do it for cheap, you know? Mm-hmm. And sometimes I almost feel like maybe I get some of the sharper students for that kind of demographic because they figured out this financial angle, you know? Okay. And another thing that's very interesting, lately is I have like a very strong international kind of element to my student population lately. I'd say about a third to half of my students are recent arrival or definitely first generation immigrants from mostly like African, Middle Eastern, and Asian immigrants. And yeah, and you know, I really feel that like 10, 20 years ago, they probably would have gone straight to UIC or Illinois State or something like that, SIU. But I think they just look at just the pure numbers and they're like, you know, 2 years, yeah. Mm-hmm.